I've been smiling. I've been brimming ear to ear this whole week, despite my 60-hour work week from hell. UFC 276 is tomorrow, and my favourite fighter is at the top of the tree almost. Volkanovski v Max Holloway, the trilogy. This one has got me thinking back and forth 100 times over. How does this play out? What adjustments are they going to make? What level are we going to see Max Holloway at? What level are we going to see Volkanovski at? Is Max finally going to get finished? All these questions have been swirling around my head. But before we jump into it, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button if you enjoy the content, bringing you daily MMA from the UK. But like I said, let's get back into the video. So when we have a look at this fight, we know the narrative and the story coming into it. Alex Volkanovski is 2-0 up, and this is last chance saloon for Max Holloway. Now, he isn't someone who typically feels pressure and someone that's going to fight on emotions. But when we saw him in the presser yesterday, I'm not saying he was rattled, but he did look slightly emotional. He did look slightly out of line. I had a look at a lot of the comments, see what people were seeing, see if they picked up on it as well. And everyone sort of noticed there was something not quite right there. Now, we could look at fight night, and it could be that chip on the shoulder that we've seen before, and we get a Calvin Kattar performance. We're not going to see that level of dominance, but I mean that level of output, that level of, look what you said about me, okay, that's fine. I'm going to go and show you who I am again. One of the greatest pound-for-pound fighters of all time, and one of the greatest featherweights of all time. Maybe it's that, but also maybe it's the pressure. Because as good as Max is, as an incredible career as he has had up to this point, and he is only 30, there is going to be a huge, astronomical asterisk against his name if he goes 3-0 to Alexander Volkanovski. Now, for my money, if Volk wins this fight, he's the pound-for-pound best featherweight of all time. I don't want to have that conversation extensively now, but we will do. But coming back to my original point, there's going to be a big asterisk over his name. So he knows that. He knows that he's 2 down, and he knows that no one has ever gone 3-0 down. So he had to fight and scratch and claw his way back into that position. And like I said, we've seen Max with a chip on his shoulder. We've seen it against Calvin Kattar. We've seen it against Brian Ortega. We've seen it against Yair Rodriguez. We've seen his incredible performances. We've seen him grit his way to the top and say, I'm not going anywhere. I want that third. So you know that he's been preparing for this, not physically, but mentally as well. But there's a lot riding on it. So naturally, he's going to be a little bit emotional. Now, do I think we see this in the fight itself? I'm not so sure. We know Max is a cool, calm customer, but I am intrigued by this matchup. I've been tossing and turning on it all week. Volk's one of my favourite fighters. Max is everyone's favourite fighter. But how's this going to play out? This is definitely one of the more interesting matchups in a very, very long time, because of course we've got the narrative coming into it, but also we have the recent performances of Max Holloway. Also we have the recent performances of Alex Volkanovski. So have they both leveled up to a point where they're still going to be fairly matched, or has someone overtaken someone else? Is Volk going to be able to make the adjustments from the second fight and potentially get the first finish or knock down on Max Holloway? And is Max Holloway going to be the first person to beat Volk in the UFC ever? Now, that one blemish on his record is at welterweight. So you can be forgiven for calling him undefeated there or thereabouts and just scrubbing that one off. Welterweight. 5'6", let me remind you. But there was one thing that stood out. I've been listening to all the interviews, every single word that has been spoken about this fight. I have been tuned in. And there was one thing I picked up on which just worried me a slight bit. Now, I know with Max Holloway's camp and the brains behind the operations, they are some of the best in the game. And the way they made the adjustments for the second fight was incredible. And of course, they have a student like Max Holloway who can implement all of these things that they plan. However, he did say, when he was talking about the style, when he was talking about how he thought it was going to play out, he was along the lines of, this is going to be a war of attrition. Now, it could quite possibly be. We know that that is on the table, but you don't want to be going into the fight with that idea against someone like Volkanovski, especially not now, because we've seen Volk level up his speed, his timing, his footwork, everything's got a little bit more fine-tuned, everything's got a little bit sharper, and on top of that, he's rolling over from his last fight camp. I swear to God, it was 2 weeks ago that he just knocked out Korean Zombie, it felt like. And now he's fighting again. So, like he always says, he's still firing on all cylinders. So, that's going to be very hard to do against someone like Volk. Not only has he not lost, but he's definitely not been finished. Now, I know that Max had those knockdowns in the early part of the second fight. I still feel like that could be dangerous. I think if Max is to be successful in this fight, he has to wear on the gas tank. Now, that's easier said than done because the conditioning of Volk is absolutely off the charts. But Max has to do something which takes a little bit of pop, a little bit of spring out of his step. Has to invest in the legs. He has to invest in the body. Now, Volk's got such good head movement. You'll never find him on the centre line. He moves off in weird angles. He goes southpaw to orthodox so smoothly. It's going to be hard to headhunt. And sometimes we've seen Max Holloway do that. Now, recently in his fights, you look at Yair Rodriguez, he was mixing it up. We saw the full evolution of Max Holloway's game. We saw 3 takedowns. We saw really nice chain wrestling. We saw a real evolution of the mixed martial arts game. And like I said, he is still only 30. He's not even become into the maturation process of his career. So that's one thing Volk has to avoid. Those body shots and those leg kicks. And that is something Max has to invest in. Another thing, he has to get off to a good start. Now, of course, that is obvious. But usually we see Max pick it up in the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th with output and getting into his rhythm. But he can't do that against Volk. You can't find yourself 1-2-0 down. And especially you can't find yourself down where Volk's picking up your rhythms and your patterns. Now, I believe Max is going to be good enough to make those adjustments in the fight, but you still don't want to play that game. And Volk knows that as well. Volk knows the exact same thing. So I expect this to be a chess match with a lot of output from the very get. How do I see it planning out? I'm not too sure. I'm really sitting on the fence. Now, of course, I'm a huge Volk fan, so I'm really leaning into him. And I do genuinely believe, with no bias intended, that Volk is just on a different level. I do believe Max can make the adjustments. I do believe he has all the skill. And of course, I do believe he can win. But I think more times than not, if we look at it out of a 10 out of 10 perspective, I think 7.5 times out of 10, Volk wins. Now, you may call me crazy, but it's the well-roundedness of his game. It's his fight IQ. It's his ability to not get hit and his ability to land shots and land big shots. And you hear Volk talk in his press conferences about he's going to land and he's going to land big. We saw that against Zombie. Now, I know there was a bit of a speed discrepancy, which we're not going to see against Max, but I do believe Volk's going to be quicker in this. I really do. Like I said, he's still rolling on from the last camp, and that last camp, he looked sharp. So I definitely think he's going to have the speed advantage, and I definitely think he's going to have the power advantage. Now, I'm not saying this lightly, and I made this prediction a long time ago, but I genuinely believe that Volk is going to be the first person to ever knock down Max Holloway. I don't think it's the narrative of Max get hit a lot and he's taken a lot of damage. I don't think it's anything to do with that. He's still young, he's still fresh. We know that he doesn't spar a lot, so he doesn't take a lot of damage in the gym. But this is a different beast in Alexander Volkanovski. He's still carrying that 200-pound frame. He's still carrying that innate rugby player. You can see when he's on his ground and pound vibes that he's just framing up. He gets really low. It looks like he's about to clear out a ruck in rugby league. Anti-jiu-jitsu at its absolute finest, firing absolute bombs down the pipe. When I saw that ground and pound against Brian Ortega, that was some of the more devastating ground and pound I've seen in a very long time. Just unrelenting. Nothing pretty about it. Just heavy shots from every angle and a relentless pace. That's the impressive thing about Volk. People can do that. There are people out there can do that. But there aren't people that can do that as relenting as he can. Especially fighting off a submission from someone like Brian Ortega, one of the greatest offensive Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu players we've ever seen in the UFC. And then make him pay like that. And you know for a fact that he's going to be able to do that in the 5th round. So I think he is going to be able to knock him down. Do I think he's going to knock him out? I'm not sure. But do I see a world where he's got him against the cage and he's framing with one hand and he's just landing shots, and Max does well to get to his feet, but he's just tying him up. He's got a body lock. He's dragging him down. He's tripping his legs. He's weighing heavy on him. He's got that big back, that big frame that he's just grinding Max down, taking a little bit of sting out of Max. And that's the thing. When it gets to those later rounds, if it gets to those later rounds, the fourth, the fifth, if Volk can wear on Holloway, he's going to be confident that he can throw caution to the wind a little bit more, because he knows he can eat his shots going into the later rounds, especially if he hasn't eaten a lot up to that point. But this is a super close fight. I won't get into the nitty gritties of it. I'm just excited, so I just wanted to talk to the camera for a little bit. But this really could go ahead. I believe Volk's on a different level, and I feel like he could be the first person to ever knock Max Holloway down. And that's what I'm going to go for. I'm going to go for a 4th round TKO bold prediction. But if not that, I think Volk's going to take it on a decision. And I believe it's going to be a unanimous decision. I don't feel like it's going to be a hotly contested split decision. I feel like Volk's clearly going to establish himself here. But I can't wait to talk to you on Sunday to see what happens, because this really could go either way. Anyway, enjoy the fights, enjoy UFC 276, and enjoy the channel. We're growing all the time, so hit the subscription button if you enjoy MMA from the UK, capturing the fight game. Peace.